Hey everyone, welcome into the Real Family Business Podcast, where our family business is here to help your family business grow. I think we talked about it before on previous episodes, but earlier last year, we actually rolled out our core values, our 12 core values that we call the Rollo Rules. Today, in this episode, we're going to talk about Rollo Rule number 6, which is people plus purpose equals profit. Keith, what do you think?
Man, Jackson, when we first rolled this one out, I was on board with all of them. I was digging it, but this one really sort of jarred me a little bit. And I was, if I'm going to come clean, it took me a little bit of thinking. I had to think through this because I realized that I was probably guilty of participation in maybe a more of a macro phenomenon where people have sort of vilified the idea of profit. Profit. Well, that sounds like we're trying to make money on somebody. Well, that's the common theme or narrative that's flawed. At the end of the day, people work hard to develop the skills and abilities they have. They work hard to provide the products and services they provide. And I think that unless you're working in a church or a nonprofit organization, you've got bills to pay. We've all got bills to pay. We've got mouths to feed. Companies have payroll to make. They've got an obligation, tax bills to pay. They've got all kinds of things that they've got to cover. And I think the idea that profit is a bad thing is a flawed narrative that anybody who has the same initial reaction I had, I would challenge to really dig deeper and think about, wait a minute, it's not what you do that creates issues, it's how you do it. And I think so many times, we're talking to small business people here, right? I think small business people understand that it's not just what they do that is unique, it's how a small business is uniquely equipped to do it. And that really leads into the people and purpose aspects of this formula. I think there's a lot to discuss here.
Yeah, when we rolled these out originally, I remember that was probably the only rule out of the 12 of them that we had a little bit of leadership pushback on them. And I think it was good. I think go listen to our last episode, right? We just talked about communication. So you have to be willing to communicate through things. But whenever I look at this rule, before I get into my thoughts, Cody, what did you think about it when it was first rolled out? And what's your thoughts now?
So I absolutely am a person about people and purpose, come from the military. You talk about going out on a mission. There's a commander's intent that kind of gives you the purpose. So if everything goes crazy, hey, if we at least meet this intent, we've succeeded. So if we focus on taking care of our people and giving them that purpose, and I didn't actually jump to what you did, Keith, on the profit. I look at it from multiple ways, not just money. There's efficiencies, there's growth, there's a lot of different gain you can have from focusing on those two things.
Yeah, I say this quite often, but our culture is really foundational upon everybody who's here in this company getting better. Constantly striving to get better. And a lot of our rules are around the relationships that you have with other people. To me, this rule is, the way I look at it, is a formula, right? You got two things and they add up to equal one other thing. And the way I look at it is not about the result. It's not about the profit, right? And I agree with Cody. I think there's many ways you can look at these rules. And one way you can look at rule number 6 is that profit is increase in yourself and in your understanding of your purpose and those kind of things. But it's not about the result. You cannot operate off of the result. You have to operate off of the process. And so whenever I look at this rule, what I see is if you have the right people and you match them with the right purpose, it is literally inevitable that you will have success, that you will grow and you will develop. And so whenever we thought about, podcast episodes, I think this one came up because it has been so foundational to us.
Yeah.
Because every business, there's a quote that says, as businesses grow, they get more complex. Naturally, right? You naturally add processes, you add all these little things you got to do. It's our job as leaders to simplify these things. And so whenever I think about simplifying everything in business at the end of the day, you got to have the right people, you got to have the right purpose.
You see, but I think that some of this also was an indictment, at least for myself, with coming from originally a large organizational environment, right, where you're disconnected. You're so far disconnected. You're one of 10,000 people that work in an organization. What you do or don't do on any given day, how much does that really have the ability to affect the organization's bottom line? Whereas in small business, every single person is a major piece of the puzzle, and very closely linked to the ability of that business to live or die, which ultimately comes down to, numbers are the language of business, right? It comes down to, can you operate in the black? Can you run a profit? And so I think a lot of that has to do with perspective, and I think there's a lot of things that you can unpack with that, both from a from the small business owner or operator side of the table, but also from the side of the table that your clients are in, or on the way that they look at that issue.
I want to get to the profit here in a minute, and I do. I think we should talk about it because, like you said, I actually was thinking about it. Like, if you ran a business and you were constantly negative, number one, you would have to go out of business.
You're not going to
and number
stay in
two,
business.
what would people think about you? You're a failure. Like, you're not even good at your job, right? But so it's not that it's a bad thing that it's positive sometimes. That the profit has to be positive.
Well, but think about a contemporary issue right now, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. Doge, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's what they're saying is the government has to run more efficiently,
Yep.
and that is a representative macro example of a mindset that is woven into this. Let's get the right people. Let's get a meaningful purpose.
Yep.
And the profit will take care of itself.
So let's start with the first thing in this formula, which is the people. Something that we came across, I'll give Josiah credit because he came across this. I know that I actually have recently as well, the idea of like positive psychology. And when your people are more positive in nature, they're more successful. You can study it in sports.
Yeah.
You can study in people's health. Actually, did you know that people who are optimistic, if me and Cody were both, let's just say, have a cut on our hand, like a paper cut, right? If I'm more optimistic than Cody is, my hand's going to heal faster than his. Because that is the power of being positive constantly. It affects everything in your life. It affects your health, your performance. I mean, if you ever play golf, you've had those days where you're like, I'm a really good golfer and I can hit the ball. And then you have other days and you're like, I'm going to quit on the third hole because this is terrible. It's honestly all up here. It's in your mindset. Yeah. So when I think about people, I think about how do we put these people in a position that is best for them, and how do we train them to be positive? Because that's something that we have to do. That's when I think about people. That's what I'm thinking about.
I would like to jump in here real quick. I'd say take a step even further back. One of the beautiful things I've seen here is that the statement and the mentality of we don't care if we grow another person unless it's the right person for our culture. We're all about God, family, country here, and I encourage those in small business to do the same thing. Is you don't want to just jump the gun on somebody just because it's a body.
Yep. You
want to make sure that person fits your culture and the goals and aims that you have for what you're trying to do there.
Well, I think there's also an angle there too. For those of us who live in Texas, there's a funny bumper sticker you see around sometimes. It says, "I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I could."
Yep.
Okay, the same thing could be said for small business. I wasn't. You were born for small business. You were born into small business, Jackson. That it's a family business. I wasn't born into small business, but I got to small business as fast as I could. And I think part of what the blessing and the responsibility that you have to cultivate in your people in small business is that understanding that they are a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, they have an impact.
I mean, just human capital when running a business is the most expensive thing.
Absolutely.
In any business.
Yep.
I don't care what your business is. And so finding people who are capable of, and they don't have to have been born with it, they just have to be capable of learning it. But you as a leader have to be able to help set that case, create that framework for understanding that every person here, every job is indispensable, whether you're taking out the trash or whether you're signing, 6-7 figure deals. You've got a major seat at the table.
Yeah, I think whenever I think about that, it obviously starts with getting the right people in. I agree with Cody. It starts with getting the right people in the door. Then it's a matter of putting them in a position they can be successful, right? Putting them in that positive frame of mind. How do we help them be more successful? I know MetLife did a study years back where they brought in, they were losing half their salespeople every year. And they brought in a guy to do a study, and basically what they found was they didn't hire enough optimists. Every optimist that they hired, way more successful than the people who were pessimistic, because it's sales. In sales, you have to be optimistic. So you got to have the right people, put them in the right seat that's going to allow them to be successful and to have that positive mindset. But then I think you have to hold them accountable. And I think that's something that we are working on very, very hard here. I think one of the questions we had kind of written down for this was, how do you correct your employees without destroying their morale? So wanted to see what y'all's take was on that. Because after you have the right people, you got to be able to hold them accountable. So
I'll steal a playbook from the Army. We have regular counselings for all of our soldiers, and most people took them as negative, right? They never did it until it was something bad. So, hey, this soldier messed up. Now we have to go counsel him on what he did bad and what we have to fix. But if you do it right, especially as a small business, if you take every single one of your people that you supervise, you take them on a regular basis. We talked about that last episode about clear, concise communication that's consistent. And you take them and say, hey, listen, this is how you're doing right now. Let's talk about that, where you are right now and where we want you to be. How do I help you get to those next steps? How do I help you correct these things? And, oh, hey, these are awesome. These are amazing accomplishments over the last whatever month. How do we take that to the next level?
That's good. I would only add to that. I think that just like are you an optimist or are you a pessimist? I think there's people who look at things through the lens of opportunity versus outcome. And I think in the small business environment, you have to find people who are inclined to understand that every good thing that happens is an opportunity and every bad thing that happens is an opportunity. And I think having an opportunity type of mindset is a key personality or human differentiator in what it takes to not just get into small business, but to stay in small business.
Yep.
Everything is an opportunity. I wish I could remember that Winston Churchill quote, failure isn't fatal. I can't remember the quote.
Yep.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Failure isn't fatal in most contexts in
Yep.
small business,
Yep.
but it's an opportunity to get better, to learn, and to build. And I think that people who look at work or their career as just the outcome I want is to amass this much wealth so I can retire, or to do this, or that's the wrong mindset. There's
I agree.
a mindset that has to accompany an opportunity and an optimist.
I agree. I think when you're thinking about your people, think about it this way: in sports, do you respect the coach who played you the most, or that was always nice to you and that said you're always great where you're at? Or at the end of your career, do you respect the coach who pushed you to get better? It's always the one who pushed you to get better, right? And what did they do along the way? They probably hugged you and screamed at you along the way. They did both things. And I think when you're thinking about how do you hold your team accountable, it cannot just be in those negative moments. It has to be consistently across the board. But you also have to make them understand, whenever I'm holding you accountable, I'm making you get better, and getting better is fun. At the end of when you see yourself develop as a person, I think everybody craves this. I think we're innately created with the desire to get better. I personally do, and I think that when you feed that, I think a lot of times when you think about employees that are happy, I'm gonna call it a manager because I think that's what a manager would do, not a leader. They would basically focus on making you happy constantly. And someone who's held accountable is not happy. I can tell you that right now. When you're held accountable in that initial moment, you're not always happy. Sometimes it's going to frustrate you. So if we're trying to make a middle of the road employee, like Keith was saying, here to get a paycheck, think about their retirement, that kind of thing, great. Yeah, that's going to be someone in the middle of the road. But when you think about somebody who's excellent, they're always going to be the kind of person who develops the aptitude to want to be held accountable, deliver on the things that they're held accountable to, and they're going to respect you for it.
But doesn't that segue perfectly into the second variable in that equation, which is purpose?
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, when you can find people who are wanting to weave who they are, I mean, literally, weave who you are into what you do. I don't know that there's a more fulfilling place in life that you could get. When you figure out what was I placed on this earth to do and how am I doing it, I think there are a lot of people out there, and I think this is why you look at a lot of Pew Research stats and stuff like that about career dissatisfaction. There's so many people out there. This is the way that I look at talent acquisition. Truly, there's over half of the American workforce is dissatisfied with their career, and it's because they're in a system that puts the emphasis on the wrong syllable. I use that metaphor all the time, but it's so apropos because.
They're focused on the result and not the process.
Exactly, and purpose. When you can weave who you are into what you do, I'm telling you, as small business professionals, that is where the magic happens with finding the right people, putting them in a situation to flourish based on what they were created to do, and the profit that ensues with that.
For us, I think that the beautiful thing about what we do in insurance, and you're going to have to figure it out for your business. Like, what is the purpose? Like, what is your business here to do? And how does it take care of people? But our business is built around protecting people's financial freedoms, right? You've built this great asset, whether it's a home or maybe it's a lot more than just a singular home or a car. Like, all of these assets are your business. How do we protect that for you? There's pride in being able to take care of someone and build a relationship with someone in that way. And so the purpose for us is really focused around how do we take care of other people? And I think a lot of people love that, right? It's why people are teachers as well. They want to help people get better, and they want to help kids grow up and learn. And so everyone has these certain purposes, but you got to weave, like you said, who you are into what you do that make you really successful.
Right, and there's even some cliche quotes about that. And he who loves what he does never works a day in his life. I mean, that's true. I'm not trying to discredit or devalue the meaning of that statement. But in the small business environment, I'm just telling you, there's a lot of people who would love to be in small business, and even having that perspective. I think the perspective of having sat on the big corporate side of the table, when you get into the small business, you realize that everything you do touches somebody, whether it's a colleague or a client or a future colleague or somebody affiliated with the organization. I think that purpose of intertwining your life into other people's lives, man, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, I'd have to say also with is values, principles, establishing those founding concepts of who you are as an organization, as a company, whatever that is. That is your initial driving purpose. And whenever there's confusion or there's gray areas, you go back to those values. God, family, country for us. No matter what's happening, no matter what situation I'm in, I stop and think, okay, God, family, country first. This is a difficult situation. Let me think through it in that mindset. It gives me purpose. It gives me drive.
And that's a great point too. I share this in conversation with people quite frequently. I say, for us being God, family, country, we want to honor God with our work. We want to take care of our family, do so in a country. Let's just keep 1 and 2, 1 and 2. But if there were a fourth thing on that list, what would it be? Stewardship of the business, right? I mean, being good business people. But the opportunity to weave those things into what you do and to be able to do it in a way that you're building something, people want to be a part of positive momentum.
Absolutely.
And winners, I think, I say, prize fish run in schools, right? When you're out fishing and you get on the fish and boom, it's the same thing with people, right? People with a positive attitude are drawn to other people with positive attitudes, and the inverse is true as well. And I think small business people have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, it also helps too when you have the right people and you have the right purpose for what you're trying to do. It also makes it a lot easier as a leader to kind of just step back and let people do their job and be really, really, really good at it. There's a quote that I've read, and I think as leaders, sometimes we got to keep this in our minds as we're building these family businesses. But it's leadership is not about being in charge; it's about taking care of those in your charge. And I think when you think about that as a leader, my job is the people and the purpose of this organization, who we have on our team, where we're going, and the result is going to take care of itself if I focus on those two things. So, like Cody said, we want our people at any time that they find themselves in a tough situation to look up and say, okay, what should I do? What are the values of the company? What are our core values? How are we going to operate? Oh, right, this is a rule that we have. This is how we're going to operate, right? We're going to take care of people first. We're going to have the right purpose in behind doing it, and we're going to go about it that way.
But you lean into that as a small business owner. You lean into that because it's not easy. It's not intuitive. It's certainly not what I think the rank and file business out there does. Nope. But as you create that identity of what your purpose is, I think your purpose attracts the right kind of people because they say, "Hey, I buy into that."
I wanted to hit on that because you said earlier was the quote that you said that like everyone says is if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Right.
Look, I love what I do. Literally, probably more than anybody you've ever found. I literally love what I do. I'm so blessed to be born in a business where I've had this opportunity. And I have tough days. I can tell you that right now. The difference is when you really love what you do, you come back to work the day after you have a bad day. Yeah. And I think that is what instilling this within inside of your team is going to do. It's going to tell them, you're going to have bad days. Go ahead and get ready for them. You're going to have days that are frustrating. I'm going to frustrate you. Your other coworkers are going to frustrate you. The technology is going to frustrate you. But when you have the right people and the right purpose, they show up the next day and they get it right and they do it over and over and over. It's not about the valleys. It's not about the peaks and the valleys. It's about the consistent trajectory. And people like working with people that win. And so when you focus on self-improvement, that literally is a win. A lot of small ones. You stack a lot of small ones, you win championships that way.
Doesn't that go right back to attitude, what you're saying? Because if the attitude's good on the bad days or the bad week or the bad month, because sometimes it's not. Those can be plateaus of grinding.
Yep. This formula is the long-term formula for winning.
Okay.
If you want the short-term formula, you focus on profit.
Bingo.
If you want the long-term, you focus on your people and your purpose. I was thinking about it with the national championship game that just happened the other day when Houston beat Duke in the Final Four. Kelvin Sampson said something in one of his basically interviews, and what he said was basically a lack of discipline gets you beat more than great helps you win. And I think a lot of times for small businesses, they're so enamored with, man, if I had more money, I could just hire these amazing people and all this talent and all these things that they have with background. Forget that. Find disciplined people. You find the right kind of people who can be disciplined in their purpose, they're going to win more than anything else because it's consistent.
See, you jarred my mind with that because I also saw somebody speaking recently and they said the desire to succeed is not the distinguishing characteristic of people. It's the price they're willing to pay.
Yes.
And the price you're willing to
Bucky
pay.
Bucky McMillan, Texas A&M, new head coach. So I give him his credit. He deserves it.
You saw that one too,
did.
but it was I heard that and my head snapped up. I'm like,
yes,
that is what we do.
Yes.
Is we find people. Everybody wants to be successful, but it's what price are you willing to pay, and the purpose should correlate. If you have purpose in what you're doing, then you're willing to pay an exorbitant price.
Absolutely,
this is what small business owners live with every day, and there are other people out there that are capable of reaching that level of enlightenment. Some people it comes naturally, other people it's nurtured out.
Yep.
But there's a lot of people out there who they want to be in on that. They just don't know where to find it or how to start.
Yep. Another quote that I heard the other day, I think you might have some too, but another quote I heard the other day was, you don't get out of life what you want to be, you get out of life what you are. And a lot of that goes back to that same thing. Just make the choice, right? Make the choice and build a team of people who understand that mindset. I think sometimes we sell people on all the beautiful things, but the reality is if you sell them on the negatives and they're okay with those, they're definitely going to love the positives.
That's true. So true.
But all right, guys, well, as we wrap up this episode, the right people, you get the right purpose, it's going to lead to the outcome of profit. And whether that profit is looked at as individual growth and development, which is great. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if we can help everybody on our team get 20% better than the day they showed up, I consider that to be a win. And then at the same time, it also is going to lead to your business being more and more successful. You have that open communication we just talked about. You pair that with the right kind of people, the right kind of purpose, and success is just going to be something that happens. It doesn't happen without any work, but it happens with those things in mind.
It's good.
True.
All right. We'll see you on the next episode.